Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are taking a tour of the most fundamental unit of life. But we're going to look at it in a completely new way. We're not seeing it as some microscopic blob, but as an absolute masterpiece of design. Okay, let's really dive into this idea, because in so many ways, a biological cell is a microscopic metropolis. It's this perfectly designed city just brimming with activity, and it's got its own power plants, factories, transportation networks, and even a central government. So to really understand how this incredible city works, we're going to take a guided tour. We'll start from the very outside and work our way all the way into its central command center. Ready? Let's get started at the border. You know, every great city needs a border, and the cell is absolutely no exception. But its boundary isn't just some simple wall, it is one of the most sophisticated and dynamic security systems in the entire universe. This right here is the city wall, and it's made of this really clever material called a lipid bilayer. Just try to picture a fence made of two layers of molecules. It's got these water-loving heads facing out and water-hating tails tucked safely inside. What this does is create a flexible, oily barrier that acts like a fluid fence, keeping all the city's important contents in and all the unwanted stuff out. And this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide breaks down the two main ways traffic is managed. On one side, you've got osmosis. That's the easy access lane, where water basically gets a fast pass. But on the other side, you have active transport. Think of this as the VIP entrance. It requires a bouncer and an energy ticket, which is a special molecule called ATP. And ATP is basically the cell's universal currency for getting any kind of work done. The sodium-potassium pump is the perfect example of these bouncers. It is constantly working, using that ATP energy to push 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ions it pulls in. This tireless work maintains a critical electrical charge across the membrane, which is the very foundation for essential functions like our nerve impulses and muscle contraction. All right, let's head deeper into the city, into its industrial heart, and see how this metropolis powers itself and produces everything it needs to function. This is where all the raw materials get turned into energy, infrastructure, and even export goods. First up, the mitochondria. These are the tireless power plants. Through a highly efficient chemical process, they convert fuel, like sugars and fats, into huge quantities of ATP. That energy currency we just talked about, which keeps the lights on and the factories humming 24/7. Next, we've got the endoplasmic reticulum, or just ER for short. It's a massive factory complex with two main divisions. You have the rough ER, which is studded with these tiny workers called ribosomes that build proteins. And then you have the smooth ER, which specializes in making fats, or lipids, and detoxifying harmful substances. Now, once products are made on the ER assembly line, they aren't just tossed out into the city. Nope. They're sent over to the Golgi bodies, the city's central post office. There, they get modified, sorted, stamped with a specific molecular address, and packaged into little vesicles for delivery. And this just brilliantly illustrates the city's efficiency. I mean, nothing goes to waste. Old or broken machinery and leftover materials are sent to the lysosomes. These are the city's recycling centers, and they're filled with powerful enzymes that break everything down into reusable building blocks. So the key takeaway here is this incredibly organized workflow. A product, like a protein, gets built on the rough ER, then processed and packaged by the Golgi, and finally shipped in a tiny transport bubble called a vesicle to exactly where it needs to go. It's a logistical masterpiece, really. Okay, now we are traveling to the most important building in the entire city, the Central Command Center. This place holds the master blueprints for everything the city is, everything it does, and everything it will ever become. The nucleus. It's basically City Hall and a high-security library all rolled into one. It's protected by a double-layered wall, the nuclear envelope, and it houses the most precious resource of all, the DNA. That's the genetic code that governs every single action within our cellular city. So, you might be wondering, how in the world do you fit miles of blueprints into a tiny microscopic office? Well, you use an incredible feat of data compression. The long strands of DNA are wound tightly around these spool-like proteins called histones. This bundled-up material, called chromatin, packs the entire library into a microscopic space. It's amazing. And you know, the city is really smart about how it accesses information. It doesn't keep every single blueprint out on the main desk. The plans it's actively using, called euchromatin, are kept loosely packed and easy to read. But the older or less needed plans, the heterochromatin, are packed away tightly in deep storage, kept safe and out of the way. Actually, reading these blueprints also requires a really crucial editing step. The actual instructions, the parts we call exons, are interrupted by these sections of non-coding information called introns. So before the plan can be used, these introns have to be precisely cut out, or spliced, to create a clean, final instruction for the cell's factories. So what happens when this incredible city needs to grow and expand, or maybe just repair itself? Well, it performs the ultimate act of urban planning. It creates a perfect copy of itself. And it does this through one of the most elegant and tightly regulated processes in all of nature. This process is called mitosis, and it's like a perfectly choreographed dance. First, every single blueprint in the library is meticulously copied and condensed down. Then, all those copies are lined up right at the city's center. Next, they're pulled apart to opposite ends of the city. And finally, 2 new city halls, 2 new nuclei, form around each set. This ensures that when the city finally splits, each new city gets an absolutely identical set of master plans. And you can bet this critical process isn't just left to chance. It is regulated by a team of proteins that act like master planners. They have these complex names like CDKs and cyclins, but their job is pretty straightforward. They are strict checkpoint supervisors. They will halt the entire process if the blueprints are damaged or if conditions just aren't right, which prevents uncontrolled growth and ensures a perfect replication every single time.
So, when you boil it all down, the real key takeaway is this. A cell isn't just a random bag of chemicals. It is a highly structured, self-regulating system of just staggering complexity. It's a city where every single component has a purpose, every process is managed, and the whole system just works together in a beautiful, life-sustaining harmony. From the tiny organelles in a single cell, all the way up to the infrastructure of a sprawling metropolis, these fundamental principles of borders, energy, production, and information management, they're universal. It really shows a blueprint for complexity that echoes all throughout our world. Thanks for joining this tour on The Explainer.